The BYU Cougars are headed to the Lone Star State to take on the Baylor Bears. Baylor's 2-2, BYU's 4-0. Why does this feel like a must-win for BYU football?
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who like to call everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, it's BYU and Baylor tomorrow morning, bright and early. 10 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff. Depending on where you're at, that's noon on the East Coast, 11 a.m. in the Central Time Zone. If you live on the West Coast, that's 9 a.m. And if you're out in Hawaii, is that 6 a.m.? So bright and early. No way around it. But looking forward to this one. Obviously, there's been a lot made of BYU and their struggles in day games of late. But the bigger thing to me going into this matchup is that BYU's ranked 22nd in the country. They're 4-0. They're getting all kinds of love from media types all around the country for their incredible start to the season. Why in the world are BYU underdogs in this game? I think it's because there's a lot of odds makers out there who think BYU is a paper tiger. I think that they think that BYU has kind of skated through, has been able to use quote unquote smoke and mirrors to get them to where they're at right now. And they think they're going to come crashing back down to earth at some point, and it could happen as soon as tomorrow against Baylor. Am I in full agreement with that? Not necessarily. I could see a scenario where BYU blows the doors off Baylor. I can also see a scenario where BYU gets absolutely blown out by the Baylor Bears. There's so many different variables going into this game in my mind. The more I think about it, the more I waffle back and forth on what I think I'm ultimately going to predict as the outcome. Those of you who saw yesterday's episode of Locked On Cougars, a crossover edition with Locked On Baylor, heard me call it 28-24 in favor of BYU over Baylor. I still firmly believe this is a game that both of these teams are going to score in the 20s. You look at the metrics for these two teams, both offenses are middling. I would say BYU's is a touch better than Baylor's at the current time, just in terms of overall measurement and rankings and the like. But defense is what these two teams have really been able to rely upon this season. Now, Baylor has been the beneficiary of some good defense and also some downright horrific defense. No further than what happened against Colorado a week ago when they could have just knocked down a simple Hail Mary and could have gotten out of Boulder with a victory, but somehow found a way to play, like I said, horrific defense and lose that game. They're going to be smarting from that loss. Dave Aranda is under the gun. He's calling the defense here for Utah. I want to say Utah State because he used to coach at Utah State for Baylor in this matchup. And he is going to have everything that he can muster to throw at BYU. He knows that the Cougars are going to come in thinking, okay, we're being disrespected. We're being overlooked. We're ranked 22nd, but still we're an underdog to this 2-2 team. What's going on here? BYU's got to be wary of all of it. And I think that BYU, just based on what they have been talking about all season long, understands that they cannot get overconfident in themselves. This is a program that I think remembers long and hard about what happened last season when they went 5-7. They at one point last year, remember, were 4-1. At one point they were 5-2, and it seemed inevitable. They were going to grind out a sixth win, get to a bowl, and show, hey, we can compete at the Power 4 level. Well, as it would stand, they got a little too big for their britches, it felt like, and things fell apart, and they suffered a 5-game losing streak. Things can turn very, very quickly in this conference. I think BYU understands that almost better than anybody. And they understand that they've got to literally take this game by game. They will not take Baylor lightly. And if they do, yeah, BYU probably gets boat raced in this game. Think back to what happened in 2021 and BYU went down there with a national ranking against the Baylor Bears and got absolutely blitzed, funny enough, by Gary Bohannon and Baylor in that game. They could not stop anything that Baylor tried to do in that game. BYU punched back as best they could with Jaron Hall and Puka Nacua, but it just wasn't enough. BYU needs to go into this game thinking that they truly are. Yeah, they are the underdog. They may be nationally ranked. They may be undefeated. But this Baylor team, they have got a lot going for them as well, and they're going to have the home crowd on their side. Now, McLean Stadium, I don't think it's one of the more hostile environments out there when it comes to opposing fan bases, but it is still a road environment, and you're going to have to deal with the fact that you are the visiting team in that venue. I think that the Cougars are going in here thinking that Jake Retzlaff's going to have to lead the way. I still would like to think that BYU's rushing attack's going to show up at some point this season, but it sounds like one guy back, one guy out. Now, obviously, the conversation I had with Aaron Roderick as part of his media session on Wednesday, I asked him, is Hinckley or Potty back, as Kalani Sitake alluded to during his coaching? So, yes, he said Hinckley is back. But then I asked, is a similar circumstance to Sione Moa? What's his status? We're going to make a determination tomorrow. I have heard nothing since then, which leads me to think that Sione Moa, the big breakout star of that Kansas State game, may not be able to play in this game. That would be a really, really disappointing thing. Think about just the kind of the transactional nature of BYU's running back position. And what I mean by transactional is one guy in, one guy out, it feels like. And it's just incredible. You have a guy like LJ Martin start the season, looks very, very good. Then he gets injured and he's done. He's going to be out until after the bowl, not the bowl game. Wow, that'd be a long time. After the bye week, excuse me. And then you have Hinckley Rapati go out. He's returning now. You lose Sione Moa. You've had Miles Davis in the lineup of points. You've had Enoch Nawahine was out for most of training camp, and he got banged up after showing well early in the season and missed Wyoming. They need to settle on, at least find a capable running back that can shoulder the load, because Jake Retzlaff continues to be BYU's leading rusher. The offense for BYU is resting upon the arm and legs of Jake Retzlaff right now, and it's not a sustainable model to expect that he can hold up the Herculean effort that he's going to have to endure if he wants to hold it up for BYU. It's just not plausible to have that happen. Could we see a guy like Enoch Nawahine, Pokai Haunga break out at running back in this game? I would hope so, because they need to take some of the stress off of Jake Retzlaff's shoulders. He has proven very, very capable. He's making big-time throws. He's making big-time plays, and he shows he's just an absolute grinder and a gamer. That's what I love about how Jake plays the game, but it is unsustainable how much they've relied upon him getting to 4-0 at this point. It will come crashing back down to earth if they continue to expect that it's going to go this way. Jake will carry them as far as he possibly can. You can tell this is a kid who cares deeply. If you watch that podcast he did with Keyshawn, I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Keyshawn Johnson, that's what it was. He did a really, really good job elaborating on what he wants to stand for, what he stands for, just doing what he does for BYU and the like. And I think all of us can get behind that kid and what he's trying to do, being a Jewish quarterback at a LDS university. It's an incredible paradox in some ways, but it's awesome at the same time. And he is going to have to continue to shine for BYU to have success. The other thing that I haven't talked about yet is BYU's defense has to be opportunistic. They've got to make plays for BYU to have a chance in this game. They have got to hold Baylor as in check. They cannot allow Baylor to start running wild on them. I firmly expect Baylor to come out in this game kind of opposite what I expect from BYU. I expect BYU to come out and do what they did against Kansas State, against Wyoming, where they start throwing the ball down the field to loosen up the running lanes, to allow whoever ends up playing running back to have their opportunities later in the game. I expect Baylor to take the opposite approach. I think they're going to have Sawyer Robertson turn it around and hand it off to the running backs and pummel, and at least try to pummel BYU in this game. They want to shorten the game. They want to make BYU feel it. They want to make it that, to use the boxing analogy, they want to take those body punches early with the hopes that late in this contest, those body blows become haymakers to the head and neck. It's going to be a very interesting matchup, and I think both of these teams are ready for it. BYU's defense is shown to be looking like generational type defense. We have not seen defense of this caliber in quite some time in Provo. Can it do its part again? Can it force a couple of turnovers to give BYU some short fields in this game? If BYU is +2 or more in the margin, I think they win this game going away. If they're 1 and even or even losing the margin, I just don't see a way that they're going to be able to have a comfortable win. They may be able to grind it out, much like they did against SMU, but I think BYU needs their defense to step up, because until that running game really arrives, I truly believe BYU is going to continue to kind of get panned by the oddsmakers saying this is a team that can't run the football consistently. I just don't believe in them, and they're going to come back down to earth at some point. And I know it sounds way too simplistic, but thinking about why BYU is an underdog in this game, That's the only thing it comes down to for me. So, A, you needed Jake Retzlaff to shine once again. There's no doubt about that. You need a running back to emerge, much like Sione Moa last week did, and help shoulder that load and take some of the stress off Jake. And once again, BYU's defense, they got to be otherworldly and do their thing. And if you have those three things show up, like along with the +2 in the margin or so, I think BYU is going to be on their way to 5-0. If not, could be a little crazy down there in Waco. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk with a guy who emerged last week as a first-time starter on the offensive line for the BYU football program. Who is he? How did he make his rise up the depth chart and passing up guys who've got far bigger recruiting profiles than himself? Well, Bruce Mitchell will explain all that coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood Gold. Now, Robinhood Gold is a new partner of ours here on Locked On Cougars and the Locked On Podcast Network. But with Robinhood Gold, you don't need that silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society folks. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth individual for any net worth person out there. These generous benefits are available only for just $5 a month, my friends. Think about that now. The new gold standard is here with our friends over at Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for specific for product specific disclosures. Visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change, and gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view or listen of the day. Cannot thank you guys enough for your continued support of the show. If you have not done so already, check out our friends over at the Locked On College Football Podcast. Get ready for the weekend ahead with Spencer McLaughlin. Check it out. It's Locked On College Football, covering everything when it comes to college football universe, available wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, had a great opportunity earlier this week to go down to BYU football practice, as I do every single week. Have a great time catching up with BYU players and coaches. And a guy last week that you may have noticed, starting at right guard, was a little-known player by the name of Bruce Mitchell. Now, some of you who I like to lovingly refer to as sickos will know who Bruce Mitchell is. I know because he comes from one of my ancestral homelands. My grandma grew up in Camas, Utah, a little farming community up there in Summit County. Absolutely love going up there as a kid. I still love going up there even as an adult. But that's where she grew up. Bruce grew up right there in Camas, went to South Summit High School. And now South Summit is a 2A school in Utah high school football. And not a lot of guys, frankly, come out of 2A football and end up playing Power 4 level football. Well, Bruce Mitchell has beaten the odds. He has played Power 4 level football, both as an offensive now and defensive lineman. Remember, he originally committed to BYU as a defensive lineman, played in different circumstances over the past, I believe, 2 years before making the transition to offensive line this year. Why did he make the transition? What has allowed him to pass up other guys in terms of the depth chart to being a guy who started against Kansas State last week at right guard? Well, I'll allow Bruce to explain all that and more, and actually simply who Bruce is right now, right here on Locked On Cougars.
I think a lot of people that showed up to the game last Saturday and saw number 63, Bruce Mitchell, as the starting right guard, said, who is Bruce Mitchell? So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bruce Mitchell. This is my third year here at BYU. I played defensive line the first 2 years. I was number 96. You might have noticed me then, but yeah, that was my first time being out on the field as 63 offensive guard. It was a lot of fun, though.
All right, guest host, you got a question for him?
No, I don't. Sorry, I'm just here to make faces and try to get him to screw up.
That would be Connor Pay hanging out with us here.
Stone cold right
so,
there.
Bruce, why the move to offensive line?
So it was about a week right before spring ball. I got a text. Jay Hill wanted to meet with me. And usually, I wasn't sure what it was about. I went in there. We had a good discussion. He just told me, he told me he thought I'd make a better offensive lineman than a defensive lineman. He said, we love you on defensive line. Love to keep you, but if you make the switch, I think you make a great offensive line. Met with Coach Woods. He's phenomenal. I owe a lot to him for being patient with me and coaching me. But, yeah, that was pretty much the switch. You know, the coaches got talking and felt that I'd be a better fit on the offensive line.
Were you an offensive lineman in high school? I remember you playing D-line.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some experience.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's obviously a big jump from 2A South Summit to Division I football, but
Power 4 football,
right?
For that matter.
Yeah.
What's been the key to you rising so far up the depth chart already, though?
I think it really helps that I was already strong.
Okay.
You know, I had to learn the playbook like any freshman, but I didn't have to really develop in the weight room. I already had pretty good strength, and then once again, just really good coaches being patient with me and helping me along.
What was the experience like? I know you've played in some big games previously on the defensive line, but what was it like playing on the offensive side of the ball?
Man, it was awesome, especially that game. That's going to be a hard one to top. I mean, that place was crazy, and we were scoring, defense was scoring, everybody was scoring out there. But, yeah, you got to think a lot more, that's for sure. And we got Connor Pay behind us. You know, he was a big help on Saturday, making sure I was on the right guy and everybody was on the right guy. It's hard to mess up when you got a good center like him.
Hey, most of my viewers and listeners are very familiar with Connor and the way he operates.
That's what I was going to ask, what it was like, you know, to have the honor of playing against the best center in America.
It was really nice. You know, he just said, slam your head into this guy and then go get this guy. And that's what I did.
Well, Remington Award candidate, Campbell Trophy candidate.
That's all I have. That's all I need to hear.
Okay, well, there we go. That's what we like to hear. Now, obviously, you guys are getting ready for a big road game against Baylor. Did you play the last time you guys played against Baylor in that opener in 2022?
I did. That was my freshman season.
Okay.
That was one of the few games I didn't play in.
Okay.
But it's Kansas State, the game last Saturday, and then that double OT win against Baylor. I've never seen two games like that, so pretty excited for this Baylor one. Should be fun.
What's your favorite part about going on the road? Because I know you guys like playing in front of your home crowd and everything, but what do you like most about playing on the road?
I think one of the funnest things playing on the road is you're just with your teammates the whole time. You know, we're going to get here Friday morning, and we're going to be with each other the entire time. So, you know, we get off that plane, and just those moments you have with your teammates, spending time with each other. We played games the night before, that's some of my favorite stuff. And then I think in terms of the game, it's always fun to go into a hostile environment and hear the crowd get quiet. You know, hopefully that's the case on Saturday. That's a fun one.
Now, I don't mean to bring up a sore point, but you guys have never won a Big 12 road game yet.
Right.
Have you guys talked about that at all as a team?
Yeah, that's been a little discussion, you know. Obviously, last season, things didn't go the way we wanted to on the road. So it's been talked about, and we're hoping to break that streak.
What's been the biggest difference in this year's team versus last year's, in your opinion?
I mean, you might have heard coaches say it already, the camaraderie. I mean, you got guys playing for each other right now, love each other. And we got an edge. We got a chip a little bit. I don't think anybody was happy about 5 games last season, no bowl game. That was disappointing. So, the camaraderie and the chip that everybody's got, those two factors I think have made us a lot better.
What are you seeing just from Baylor on film? What are you expecting?
Yeah, they're a good team. I think, they're in the same boat as us, kind of got that edge, and you see that they play tough, they're physical, their defensive ends are really good pass rushers. So we're definitely going to have our hands full. They're 2-2, but they got a lot of talent, and they definitely have caught our eye. We're not taking this game off, and we're looking forward to going to Waco.
Did you, having been a defensive lineman at this level, help you as an offensive lineman because you kind of know what they're thinking in a way?
Yeah, I definitely do think it's helped, especially with picking up cues and keys of when defensive linemen are slanting or dropping. That was a big help in helping me learn the playbook. I could kind of see what the fronts and what fronts were doing. I already knew the defensive aspect, or maybe not defensive aspect, but defensive line. There's a lot going on over there that I still need to learn, but I at least had a pretty good idea what the defense is trying to do.
Now, last thing for me is, I know you're married to a fellow BYU athlete.
Yeah.
What's that dynamic like?
Oh, it's awesome. My wife, Sadie, she ran here, and it's so much fun. I mean, we're just in a great point in our life, being able to live out our dreams with each other. We don't see as much of each other as I think we'd like to. Like in the fall, I'm gone, and then her season really picks up in the winter and spring. So then she's gone then. But, man, we have a lot of fun together, living out our dreams, supporting each other, keeping each other accountable. It's awesome being married to her.
Okay, I'm going to ask the inevitable question. There's a right answer to this question. Who's the best athlete?
Yeah, my wife.
Good
Yeah.
answer.
I got a long ways to go before I catch up to her. She's the All-American national champion. I got a lot of ground to cover before I catch up to my wife in terms of accolades.
A big thank you to Bruce Mitchell for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. Great personality, humble kid who understands that he is living a dream right now, playing for BYU. And by the way, smart answer. His wife, she truly is. She's a part of the women's track and field team, and she is legitimately a national champion. It was the distance medley relay, if I'm not mistaken, is what they won, and she was part of it. Speaking of Sadie, and yeah, she is the better athlete. You are a smart man there, and I asked that question because I can freely admit my wife, who played collegiate softball, is far and away the better athlete in my family. I joke all the time with family and friends. When people ask me who's the best athlete in the family, I'm like, well, let's just put it this way. My wife is the one who actually played a sport at a high level. I just happen to talk about them for a living. So big thank you to Bruce once again. And I appreciate him kind of letting Cougar fans know who he is. Does he start tomorrow against Baylor? That's anybody's guess. Austin Leusa as well as Sonny Makassini have returned to practice, according to what Kalani Sitake said earlier this week to the Cougar Club. 3 guys for 1 spot. Which guy gets the start? We'll find out. But I don't think Bruce did anything to make himself not a candidate to start at right guard once again. And when you're the highest rated offensive lineman and it's your first start of the season, your first start of your career playing offensive line, it's pretty impressive stuff for a young man of his caliber. And he's making everybody up there from South Summit and the greater Camas area proud by doing what he's doing on the gridiron. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we'll wrap up today's show. We're going to talk BYU basketball. The Big 12 schedule is out. How big of a gauntlet is it truly going to be for Kevin Young in his first year at the helm of the BYU basketball program? Well, let's just put it simply, it ain't going to be easy. We'll break it all down coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season big with a big return with our friends at FanDuel. No matter what you're into, it may be NFL, it may be college football, NBA, college hoops, who knows, NHL with the Utah Hockey Club if you're here in Utah. They all are available courtesy of your friends at FanDuel to have some fun with in terms of your sports betting because FanDuel is simply put, America's #1 sports book. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The best part is the app is super simple and easy to use. You just kind of scroll through, find what you're looking for, tap it, put in your wager, and on you go. It's as simple as that. So get started right now with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. $200 bonus bets when you place just a $5 wager. You can put it down on BYU and Baylor tomorrow, for example. Take advantage of it today. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, and they are America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please check out the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Join us today. I'd love for you guys to be a part of it. It's getting you inside intel that I am hearing and learning about BYU sports and sent to you directly to your phone in the form of a text message. Now, it's a great way to interact with me during the show as well. We have one-on-one conversations via text. So if you want to be a part of it, click the hyperlink in the show notes below, whether you're watching and or listening to this, and join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Really do appreciate all of you who have joined. I've seen a nice uptick since the season began over the past month or so, and hope that many more of you will join us in the coming days and weeks right on our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk BYU hoops. Big announcement yesterday because the Big 12, as we all know, is America's premier college basketball conference. There's just no doubt about that. And the projections, funny enough, for this conference, the worst team, according to some, is Colorado, and they're somewhere in the, the 100s, like the low 100s. This basketball conference is just an absolutely loaded conference. And the Big 12 schedule shows that BYU under Kevin Young in year 1 is going to have to run an absolute gauntlet here if they want to really thrive and succeed at the level that I think they aspire to. Is it going to go perfectly? There's absolutely zero chance that it's going to go the way that they want it. BYU last year overexceeded all expectations. But the one thing I like about this schedule is it's full of opportunity for the BYU Cougars. The nice part is they're not messing around a lot with the schedule for BYU. Outside of a Wednesday game at Arizona State, BYU will play Tuesday, Saturday, will be their entire schedule through the Big 12 slate. That will allow them to get into a bit of a rhythm, obviously with the practice schedules and the like. So that's a positive in that respect. They do play more road back-to-backs than they have home back-to-backs. There's 3 that I saw in terms of road back-to-backs versus 2 in terms of back-to-back home games. It's not like the NBA where you play 2 straight nights. That doesn't happen in college hoops. But spending extra time on the road obviously takes guys away from school, takes them away from their beds. There's a lot that goes on with that. But with how big this conference is, it's inevitable you're going to have to go on the road at some point and have those back-to-backs. Obviously, BYU is not immune to that. But the bigger thing about this schedule is, as I mentioned, it's full of opportunity. It starts off New Year's Eve. If you're going to be there, I hope you are. Arizona State comes to town. It's going to be a fun one to kick off Big 12 play against ASU. And I think that could kick off what could be a really, really fun run. But the thing about it is you play December 31st at home against Arizona State. And then, oh, by the way, that Saturday you're in Houston facing off against the Houston Cougars. It doesn't get easy. It's not easy at all. Then you follow it up home against Texas Tech. Then you're at TCU, home with a back-to-back set against Oklahoma State, and then your arch rival Utah for the first time in the Big 12 conference together. You go to the Huntsman Center on Saturday, January 18th. That's going to be an absolute barn burner. It's going to be a sellout at the Huntsman Center. They actually will have to tear down the curtains for that game because the other ones, they may still have them up. But then you just go through this. You go at Colorado, home to Cincinnati and Baylor, at UCF, home to Arizona. There's an incredible who's who of college basketball that BYU faces in this. Kansas, the vaunted Jayhawks, they make a return trip to Provo. They're going to play in Provo February 18th on a Tuesday night in the Marriott Center. That is going to be an absolutely raucous environment. I fully expect every one of these home games for BYU in basketball, it is going to be an absolute madhouse. And I, for one, cannot wait to be out there watching this. I plan on being at literally every home game BYU plays in basketball this season. Does it require me giving up extra sleep because I do morning radio for the KSL Sports Zone? I have this podcast. Yeah, it does, but it's worth it to watch this level of basketball. The nice part is I don't think BYU's out of it by any means in terms of their ability to compete in this league. I talked about it earlier this week as BYU opened up their training camp. This on paper is one of, if not the most talented rosters that BYU's frankly ever had. Kevin Young is going to have a lot of weapons at his disposal. His biggest concern, I feel like, is going to be finding which guys work best with one another and, frankly, which guys are going to have to sit out of the rotation. Because when you have that many guys on a roster, you can't play a 15-man rotation. It just simply won't work in a 40-minute college basketball game. Rotations routinely end up being shortened to 8 or 9 guys at the very most by the time conference season gets here. And it's going to be interesting to see which players make that quote-unquote cut, and the other guys who are going to be relegated to a bench role and cheering on their teammates, maybe seeing spot duty at times if foul trouble or other things pop up. The bigger thing about this schedule is it's going to test everything that BYU's got in them. They are going to have to be able to go out and play at the McHale Center at Arizona on February 22nd, turn around, and the next Wednesday play in Tempe at Desert Financial Arena against Arizona State. That's not an easy set of games to play. They also have a road back-to-back out on the East Coast. I believe it's Cincinnati and West Virginia, February 8th to February 11th. Remember, last year, BYU had a similar circumstance. I think it was UCF and was it West Virginia? And they struggled mightily in that road trip. They're going to have their work cut out for them, but everybody in this league has that work cut out for them. There are very few teams that want to go and play in the Marriott Center. The teams that got picked to travel to Provo, obviously a lot of them will probably double up with Utah with that road trip. They're thinking, man, we got to go to Elevation. We got to play. That's the thing about this. Everybody in this conference, speaking of basketball, is like, oh, we got to go there. We got to do that. We got to. That's the glory of this league. Everybody can beat anybody on any given night, it feels like. It feels like all 16 teams in this conference have opportunities, depending on how the schedule may lay out, if they're hot one night, that they can notch a major upset. And that cannibalistic nature that could ensue with the Big 12, both will hurt, but also thrill fans. And I mean hurt just in the sense that, okay, my team can't catch a break. Well, guess what? Nobody else in this conference is going to catch a break. It's one of those things that you look at and say, man, whoever makes it out of this conference as the top dog this season, They have fended off literally all comers. And that team should be the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament, in my opinion, even if their record may pale in comparison to some other teams out there from the ACC, the Big East, Gonzaga out of the West Coast Conference. They may pale in terms of the overall record, but the fact that they have fought the wars, as I will use that analogy, in this conference, they will be very deserving of this. A lot of projections have BYU as low as 10th or 11th in the 16-team Big 12 in basketball. But if you've been paying attention to the bracketology out there from Joe Lunardi and the like, BYU is projected as a 7 seed. That shows you the depth, the breadth, and the overall talent that the Big 12 has. And by the way, if BYU is one of the best rosters ever and could finish in the lower half of the conference, that means this conference is going to just be insanely loaded and just, like I said, a dog-eat-dog world out there. And I, for one, cannot wait to see all the madness go down. It will be a ton of fun to track it, to talk about it, to break it all down. We're over a month away from the start of it. We haven't even reached October yet. It'll be early November when it finally gets going. But your first opportunity to see the Cougars, a glimpse at them, is next week on October 3rd. BYU has that Cougar Madness. The following week, October 9th, BYU's having their blue and white game. Why are they having the blue and white game almost a month ahead of when they actually take the court full-time? I don't know. But hey, it's an opportunity to get a look at what Kevin Young's got cooked up, get a feel for some of these players, start to learn their names, understand what their game looks like. It's a fun time. I never will wish away college football season because it is my pride and joy. I think those of you who've been listening to me long enough know that I am a I'm turning into a college basketball junkie. I'm a college football junkie at heart. But college basketball, it is growing on me, and it's growing on me quick. And the help is that the Big 12 is just compelling any which way you want to cut it. And it's going to be fun to see how BYU competes in this league. Could the wheels come off at some point? Sure, that absolutely could happen. There will be teams that it will happen to this season. Fingers crossed it's not Kevin Young and it's not BYU. And in fact, I'm hoping that BYU once again goes out there, much like they did last year under Mark Pope, and shocks the world. They finished 5th last year. Can they improve on that? Be pretty impressive if they can, because if they do that, you're looking at a 2 seed, a 3 seed at the very worst. Be pretty impressive stuff to see what they can do with the BYU basketball program. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the podcast. As I said in my prediction for BYU Baylor, I'm sticking with the Cougs, 28-24. Looking forward to breaking it all down. We'll have a postcast edition after the game goes final. Of course, we'll be interacting with you guys in the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. So once again, a shameless plug. Sign up for that and join us there. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view or listen of the day. And of course, big thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us here as well. And this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.